right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to, I think, our first meeting for some of us in Committee Room 1 with a slightly reconfigured Standing Committee on Police Oversight, Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport. I also want to welcome so I think as we kick off, if we can all just do some introductions. We do have 2 members online, but let's first start with the members in the room. So I'm Benedicta van Minnen. I am the new chair of the Standing Committee.
Good morning, everyone. I am Peter Johnson, a permanent member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, member of this committee.
Goeiemorgen, Benson Renzo, a member of this committee.
Thanks very much. Let's get the members online.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to the officials, colleagues. I'm Memory Boyson, a member of this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson, all members. Aisha Kasim, member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to find out from our procedural officer if we have any apologies.
Good morning, Chair, members and officials, and no apologies have been received.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, sorry, my glasses broke, so whatever I do, it's not quite the right distance when I try to read something. Okay, so the purpose of the meeting today is to get a briefing from Heritage Western Cape, and it's got to do with the issue of the long list for the new board. So I think if you could please introduce yourselves, and then we can hand over to you for your presentation.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. I'm Michael Jans van Rensburg. I'm the CEO for Heritage Western Cape, but also the Director for Museum and Heritage with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport.
Good morning, committee. My name is Penelope Meyer, and I'm the Deputy Director for Legal Support at Heritage Western Cape.
Good morning, committee. My name is Colette Schermeyer. I'm the Deputy Director with Heritage Western Cape and also with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. I'm responsible for Heritage Resources Management Services. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much and welcome. I know you've addressed us before, but I think it's also just a matter of making sure that the committee understands what the purpose is for the appointments that we need to do and what the requirements are and the qualities that you would find particularly useful, so that when we do start looking at the long list and start discussing how we're going to bring it down to a short list, we are aware of what we would be looking for to facilitate being able to recommend members who actually really would add value. So please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again for this opportunity to brief the Standing Committee this morning. The presentation that you have in front of you, you will see that it is being presented on behalf of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. And as per our introductions, we have dual roles. We both represent the entity, Heritage Western Cape, myself as CEO, Penelope as legal advisor, and Colette as deputy director. But at the same time, we are appointed by the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport as our employer, and we also have roles within the department. The department provides oversight in terms of Heritage Western Cape, and so we are presenting today as the department, giving you understanding of the process in terms of the shortlisting for the Council of Heritage Western Cape. I would like to start off with just a quote from the preamble of the National Heritage Resources Act that reads that our heritage is unique and precious, and it cannot be renewed. It helps us to define our cultural identity and therefore lies at the heart of our spiritual well-being and has the power to build our nation. It has the potential to affirm our diverse cultures and in so doing shape our national character. And it's in that sentiment that we would just like to highlight the importance of the work of the entity, and ultimately the council that's appointed oversees and runs the entity. And so it is quite a serious responsibility to shortlist and appoint the members that's going to take Heritage Western Cape forward. Regarding today's presentation, the next slide just shows you the overview. We're going to briefly cover in 20 slides, so it's not too long, just the constitutional and legislative mandates, the establishment of HWC, its functions, and then just a couple of slides, not long, just on a few successes and challenges. And then we're going to look at the composition of the council, the process for appointment, the requirements of members, and the expertise that we are looking for, and then just some principles on guiding the appointment of council. And I'm also going to give a slide on who's currently on council and who's eligible for a reappointment. Thank you, Wasim. So in terms of the legislative mandate, the establishment and function of HWC, we find that in Schedule 4A, the functional areas of concurrent national and provincial legislative function, Section 24B2 of the Constitution of South Africa, and then in the Constitution of the Western Cape, Section 81N, that requires the province to look after its heritage. In terms of the establishment of Heritage Western Cape, the National Heritage Resources Act 25 of 1999 empowers the Minister to establish a Provincial Heritage Resource Authority, which shall be responsible for the management of the relevant heritage resources within the province. So each province has that responsibility. Provincial Heritage Resource Authorities are established as body corporates capable of suing and being sued in their own corporate name. So it's a legal entity in its own right. And Heritage Western Cape was established in terms of this Act and the Western Cape Provincial Regulations in 25 October 2002. And so we are, I think, by far the longest established Provincial Heritage Resource Authority in the country. About 23 years now, Penny? So 23rd, huh? Yeah. Yeah. In terms of the functions, the National Heritage Resources Act established the provincial heritage authorities to perform some of the following key functions. Firstly, to advise the Minister on the implementation of the Act or relevant provincial and municipal legislation. Very importantly, to protect and manage heritage resources in the province. To maintain a database on heritage resources in accordance with national standards, and to determine the competence of local authorities to manage heritage resources in accordance with the national system for the heritage grading of local authorities. And so we are, in effect, need to work with national government, which is SARA, as the national body, and then also with our local authorities, our municipalities. Just to highlight a couple of successes that you may already be aware of. Heritage Western Cape and the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport played the leading role in developing the research dossier that led to the successful inscription of the new World Heritage Site last year. This was inscribed at the 46th World Heritage Committee Convention in New Delhi. And this new World Heritage Site comprises of 2 sites in the Western Cape, one Deep Kloof in the Elands Bay and one at Pinnacle Point, there by Mossel Bay, and then another site in KZN, Sibudu Cave. There's a couple of sites that we would still like to add in future, but as it is, the serial nomination has successfully been inscribed. Then Heritage Western Cape also played and will continue to play a big role in the memorialization of liberation stalwarts. You may have heard about the repatriation project, where 3 liberation stalwarts were repatriated last year. Their remains were brought back to South Africa. These were Basil February, Batil Tamana, and Madoda Mayoli. HWC assisted with the arrangements of the provincial handover ceremonies and the root burial. And we will also be taking forward the nomination for the declaration of the new grave sites where they're now buried in the Western Cape as provincial heritage sites. And we will continue to play that role for future repatriations that happen as well. And then just to also give you a bird's eye view in terms of the applications process by Heritage Western Cape. The graph on screen shows the last 5 years. You can see a slight dip during COVID, then to 2021. But Heritage Western Cape is pushing the between 2,500 applications that the team processes. These it's a variety of applications, everything from buildings or structures that's older than 60 years that needs a permit for maintenance, to provincial heritage sites, to large-scale developments like notice of intention to develop, etc. And so at the moment, I think, just for your interest, the bulk of our resources go into processing these applications, as it plays a big value in terms of the economy and the development sector. With regards to challenges, overall, we've identified in our roadmap 2 core areas. One is service delivery and one is reputation. With service delivery, capacity has always been a challenge for HWC for a variety of reasons. Initially, it was limited staff. Now, more recently, it's poaching of our staff, because our staff are very well trained and they go to local authorities like the City of Cape Town because they can offer higher salaries. Then reputation, it's always a very difficult thing to manage, because HWC is always caught between a rock and a hard place. You either give good news to the developer, or you give good news to the heritage conservationist. You can't please both with the applications. And so the challenge for us is always to try and put forward the narrative that the decisions that we make, be it a permit that's approved or not approved, is in the interest of heritage conservation, and that is in the interest of our communities and the Western Cape as a whole. And so sometimes these decisions promote development, and other times it promotes conservation. But in both cases, we believe these are wins, and it's very difficult to tell the other party that fell on the wrong side of the decision that this is a win for them. It's that conundrum that the Speed Cop has. The Speed Cop has to give you a ticket and make you feel optimistic, while leaving with the ticket, and that's very difficult. And it's the same thing for us. And so our theory of change is that if we can focus on heritage promotion, we can focus on upping our service delivery, that we will create a sense of optimism in the industry, regardless of whether you are a conservationist or whether you are a developer. And we developed our focus areas to combat these challenges. There's 3 focus areas: to improve resource capacity, to promote heritage values, and to increase efficiency. Over the last 5 or so years, we've made a lot of inroads into the interventions in these areas. But I just want to highlight that the promotion of heritage values is front and center for us this year, and it's also a ministerial priority for us. All right. Then in terms of the appointment of HWC Council, the Western Cape provincial regulations prescribe that HWC shall be under the management and direction of such a council. The council serves for a term of 3 years, and the council must meet at least 4 times a year, but it can meet more depending on the applications and matters that's in front of it. And the term of office for the current council expires now this year, the 31st of October 2025. Heritage Western Cape can also establish subcommittees. The council delegates functions to these subcommittees, and on these subcommittees, they appoint certain experts. Currently, the subcommittees that HWC has is the Heritage Officer Committee. This is an in-house committee consisting of heritage officers, staff that essentially processes all of the applications, and then where further expertise is required, they escalate it to one of these other committees. The next one is the Built Environment and Landscape Committee. Then we've got the Impact Assessment Committee, the Inventories Grading and Interpretation Committee, and then we also have an internal appeals system. So it requires an appeals committee. And so any member that is aggrieved with the outcome of the application can lodge an appeal to the appeals committees. And like I said, HWC Council ultimately does a public call for experts to serve on these committees. Then the process of appointing the Council of Heritage Western Cape. Regulation 2 provides that the council shall be appointed in the following manner. The provincial minister must invite the general public to nominate persons for the appointment as members of the council. And this was done through a public call, which was published in newspapers in 3 languages, also circulated on the department's website, social media, and distributed to stakeholders. Once such nominations have been received, the provincial minister must refer them to the standing committee for shortlisting in terms of sub-regulation 2.3. And then the standing committee must compile a shortlist of candidates from the nominations received and submitted to the provincial minister in terms of sub-regulation 2.4. So ultimately, the discretion to appoint still lies with the minister, but the consultative process with the standing committee provides that you can provide him with a shortlist from which he can then make a decision. The requirements of members and areas of expertise that we're looking at, sorry if it's a little bit small. In order for one to be a member of HWC Council, the following must be adhered to. The person must be a South African citizen. They must be a permanent resident in the Western Cape, and they must have knowledge of and qualification, experience, or interest in subjects related to heritage resource management. So you can see this third one is quite broad. The person doesn't necessarily have to have a heritage qualification. They could simply have interest in the subject to qualify this criteria. And then the following are key areas that are covered by HWC, which we look out for in terms of competencies and skills. These are archaeology, anthropology, architecture, town planning, urban design, geology, paleontology, history, law, and intangible heritage as guidelines. The following are additional recommended areas of competence that should be considered, and I'll just stand still a little bit on these as well. Governance, promotion and marketing, and emotional intelligence. Governance is vitally important for HWC. The council, like I said, is the body that runs the entity. And for the past 13 years, Heritage Western Cape has had unqualified, also known as clean audits, and we would like to continue that. And so it is important that at least some members on the council, and preferably the chairperson, has some governance experience, etc. Then promotion and marketing, given that this is a ministerial priority, and given that this is also a key focus area for Heritage Western Cape to build that optimism in the industry, we also ask that we consider anybody that shows promotion or marketing experience, as that could be very useful to council. And then thirdly, I think this one must not be underestimated, is the emotional intelligence, which is very difficult to gauge from persons or people's CVs. And so we do ask that we try and consider this aspect. What we mean by this is we're not wanting yes men or yes women on council, but we want people that can work in a team and that can argue constructively. In previous councils, not the current one, in previous councils, we had had a lot of code of conduct matters where people act in unprofessional ways, or they struggle to bring across their own point or argue in a constructive manner, which then sows disunity amongst the council, and it adds to that damaging reputation of Heritage Western Cape, because often we have interested and affected parties, members of the public, that sits in during cases that's being presented to council. And so it is vitally important for us that we maintain that sense of professionalism and people adhere to the code of conduct at all times. And so these three things, although they are not heritage expertise or competence, we ask that you also consider those. Also keep in mind that the Council of Heritage Western Cape, your governance, your financial management, your legal, those are things that are very appropriate to the council, where when they appoint their subcommittees, they appoint subject experts in the fields of history, archaeology, etc. Like, it doesn't mean those aren't important on council, they're also important, but they become even more important in the subcommittees, if I can put it that way. Then on the next slide, the principles guiding the appointment. The provincial minister appoints the council of HWC from the shortlist submitted by the standing committee. Council may consist of between 4 and 14 members. We recommend 7. On the previous council, we had 8 with 1 resignation. So currently we have 7 members. It's recommended that the standing committee shortlist about 12 members of the long list. That would give the minister some scope to make his appointments. And in appointing members, the provincial minister must take the following into account: cost effectiveness and efficiency. And that's why one of the reasons why we recommend about 7 or 8, because these members do receive a stipend for their work. Then effective administration and service rendering, capacity in the specific categories of heritage resources to be managed in the Western Cape, and also the cultural, geographical, demographic considerations. I can point out that we are very proud of the current council as being the most diverse council in HWC's history in terms of gender and cultural and ethnic orientation, which we are very proud of, and it has worked out very well, in my opinion, over the last 3 years. And then lastly, no member may serve more than 2 consecutive terms on council, which is a disqualifying criteria if you've already had done so. Then on the last slide, the current council members and new term nominations. The names that you see on the screen, these are the current 7 members on council. 2 of them have unfortunately now served 2 consecutive terms. This is Mr. Ron Martin and Advocate Ndlutlu, and so that makes them no longer eligible to be appointed, and they have also not been renominated for that reason. The other members, Ms. Rihanna Ghani, who is the current chairperson, Mr. Sapiwe Muvamengwana, Ms. Corley Smart, Ms. Heidi Boyce, and Mr. Tyrone, or as we know him, Greg Ontong. They have all been renominated and they are all eligible for reappointment. Then there's a total of 31 nominations that were received during this public call. And like I said, 5 out of the 7 current members are eligible for reappointment. And then the council did implement a peer review system in this year. This was the first time that this was done. It emanated out of an internal audit recommendation, which we welcomed, and the council then adopted the system. The council essentially reviewed the council as a whole, and then individually, anonymously provide individual scores. And the lowest individual score of the members that are eligible for reappointment was 75%. And so that was the collective opinion of all of the council members of that one person. That's the lowest. Everybody else scored higher than that, some even 95%. And so from my point of view, the current members on the council, obviously standing committee must, apply its mind, but I do not have any objection with the renomination or shortlisting of any of those that's currently eligible for appointment. And I think that's it. We're open to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I agree. Can I just ask, sorry, as a point of clarity, the stipend, how much is that? Is it per meeting? How's it structured?
So it's per hour. And Colette, you sent me the amount. You want to answer?
Thank you. So yes, in terms of the stipend, they are remunerated per hour. Currently, the council chairperson's rate is 556 Rand per hour, and then the members 337 Rand per hour.
Okay, let's see. Questions. All right, let me start at the end.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think one must welcome the background provided and also the process, guiding the appointments and so on. Now, let me build on a point made by, in fact, it's here on my notes, made by a fund manager. She has a tendency of stealing my points, and I hate building on points she always make. Maybe accused of something I don't know, but you said 500 per hour for the chair and 300 for ordinary members. Now, is there a duration for the meeting? Are the meetings scheduled to sit for a particular period, or it would depend on when the meeting ends. That's the first question. The second question, how about travelings? Do the council provide assist on logistics for travelings, perhaps, and also accommodation? You made a point, and I must confirm that I did attend some of the burial. I think one, that of Tamana. Yes, but how many provincial heritage sites, burial heritage sites in the province? When I was at the funeral burial, somebody said the one in Eastern Field potential is going to be a heritage site. Kindly confirm that. The second point is the community house in Sword River, a heritage site. What goes with a heritage site? When a building or whatever is declared a heritage site, is there resource support from council? Do you perhaps have the advert? You perhaps have the advert of the current process. Where was it advertised? One, it's deep interest on that, and I think you have indicated that about 30. We're shortlisted. Am I right? The number of people who applied. 31. Yeah, 31. One would be interested with that. And how many will you give us the long list, or you are going to work on it, right? Looking at the criteria. I must say, the criteria which you have made, but there is no talk about people with ICT background. They don't talk about it. And given the current moment, I thought that perhaps that would be important, for the council to move with time. Those are the issues, Chair, I wanted to raise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It also actually covers some of the questions I was going to raise. I've got Member Johnson, and then I've got Member Kasim.
Thank you, Chair. I know we are speaking about the process to be followed when appointing a council. I just want to check in terms of the heritage applications. I know it says here the total number of applications received in the last 5 years. I just sort of want to check, is this the number of applications received and finalized, or is it just the number of applications received? The reason why I'm asking this is I know we are sort of looking at the appointment of a board that will obviously essentially sit with the applications itself. But from some personal experience that I've had dealing with Western Cape Heritage from 2023, I actually assisted with 2 applications from residents in Stellenbosch and Paarl when I was still a member of the local council and a mayoral committee member. It was an absolute to sort of get a response from the department in terms of applications. And I know we've spoken about challenges. I just sort of want to find out that, yes, we are looking at the appointment of a board again, but in terms of internal resources and staffing, is there sort of a shortage on that? Because I remember that we eventually got the MEC involved in 2 of these applications, and we still could not get a response just whether applications was received or not. And this was in June 2023. So I just sort of want to get an understanding it doesn't, at the end of the day, we've got this great board and this great board of people, but if the applications don't necessarily get processed in time, then I don't really see the need in the entire exercise. I just sort of, was there a staffing issue in that year, more or less? Because I was looking at the amounts of applications for that specific year. Obviously there's always a budget shortage in all departments, but whether that was something that was an issue in that particular year. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we finish the round of questions? Or do you want to answer those two first? Okay, great. Member Kasim?
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is very short. I just wanted to check in terms of those being re-nominated. What is the attendance and participation like in the previous term? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks. And then from my side, I mean, there's so many questions I'd like to ask that aren't really relevant to the purpose of this meeting. So I'm going to contain myself. In some departments, you see quite an imbalance between, should we say, the attention garnered in the metro versus the rest of the province. Is that a similar problem that you have with heritage, or do you find that you're able to put enough attention into the non-metro areas? That's the one. And then the intangible heritage. I'm really interested. I noticed that when I went to the presentation yesterday. If you could just unpack a bit what intangible heritage is and the kind of issues that you have there. And then the third question, you were talking about local authorities, your relationship with local authorities. Am I right in assuming that, for example, Cape Town would be relatively competent or very competent, but that other jurisdictions or other smaller municipalities you possibly are not able to have such a good relationship with? And in a case like that, do you find that you as provincial heritage do more in those spaces than you would with a local authority that possibly is more effective? If we could just deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and Committee. I'm going to ask my colleagues just to help me out with some of the responses. But let me take them from the top, and then Penny and Colette, if you can come in. So with regards to the first question on the duration of meetings as it affects their claims, so internally, Council approves a policy that allows members a certain amount of preparation hours for the council or committee meetings. I think these are 5 or recently increased to 7 hours preparation time. So that's the maximum that they can claim in terms of preparation. And then the meeting time is dependent on the amount of items on the agenda. So the council and its committees, they're supported by departmental staff. And so we put together the agenda, etc. Depending on the committee and council, they would meet based on a schedule. So council would meet normally once every quarter, and that would normally be a normal business day. And then they get those few hours that they may do in terms of preparation that they can claim. With the Balcom, they meet a little bit frequently, and the other committees also meet about once a quarter. Our HOMS is the one that processes the majority of the application, and that's internally, that's the heritage officers that does that. So out of the 2,200 odd applications, all of those applications goes through HOMS, and then a small percentage of those where they don't have the expertise that gets escalated to the other committees. In terms of claim for travel, the council has approved a policy, but it doesn't really impact our budget too much. When we have events, for example, a provincial heritage site launch or a QR code launch, this event is normally attended by the council chair and perhaps by the chair of the IGIC committee that processes those type of applications, and so we can reimburse them for expenses. Did I cover that, colleagues? Was there anything else there in terms of claims? That's fine. Okay. Yes, thank you for that, Penny. So if we do have a meeting in the city, for example, and the member is an hour or two away, they can claim travel to come to the meeting, but the majority of our meetings are now online, so we don't really get those claims. We try to have a meeting in person for one in every interval. So out of the 4 council meetings for the year, we will have one that'll be in person, and then there may be some TNS claims for that, but the others will be online. If Balcom is having a meeting once a month, then that means one every quarter will be in person. It's just good to have those in-person meetings to keep also the professional relationships well and tidy. Thank you very much. Then, how many PHS or provincial heritage sites, burial sites specifically, do we have? That's quite difficult, member, to tell you right here on the spot. We can come back in writing because there's over 1,000 provincial heritage sites in the province, and then some of them will be burial sites and others won't be. So we'll just have to check the register to give you that exact figure. More than 2,000. So yeah, yes. So it's quite difficult to tell you that out of hand, but in terms of the process to nominate for provincial heritage sites, the legislation says anybody can nominate a site. That nomination comes to Heritage Western Cape, and then it goes through a public consultation process. It gets processed by our IGIC committee, and if it then gets supported by the IGIC committee, it goes to council. Council makes the final decision, and if they approve it, then that site gets declared and gazetted as a provincial heritage site. So in terms of the repatriation, we recognize the significance of these graves, and so it's an internal process that we implement, but it still goes out for public comment, and we will do similar with new ones that do come our way. With regards to resources for provincial heritage sites, Heritage Western Cape unfortunately doesn't have the resources to assist owners of properties to maintain their provincial heritage sites. That is not our function. Our function in terms of the legislation is to formally protect, and then it's the onus on the property owner to ensure that that site remains maintained. The legislation does provide some powers to Heritage Western Cape, in which if we see a site that is not being maintained, or somebody reports a site not being maintained, if it is formally protected, we make contact with the owner. Eventually, we can get to a point that we call a compulsory repair order, etc. So there's some of those powers, but unfortunately, we do not have the funding. There's just too many sites, and giving funding to one site would mean setting a precedent to having to maintain all of these across the province. The advert for the current process. The community house in Salt River, if that is a PHS. Is it not? Please go ahead.
Thank you for the question, member. I am aware that Ceciline, the ASD for policy planning and research, is currently dealing with that application. So that is currently with Heritage Western Cape, but it is currently with the IGIC committee, Inventories, Grading and Integrations Committee. So it hasn't been tabled at our council yet, but it's in process.
Thank you very much, Colette. In terms... Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, member. So with regard to the advert process, they were published in the Weekend August, the Burger, and the Causa advert was in the Isolezwe newspaper, if I pronounced that correctly. And then I'm just trying to see if I can get, I'll see if I can pull up the advert now just to give you the time frame that it was published, but those are the 3 newspapers. Member asked a question about IT competency on council. So given that council is supported by the department staff, we have identified IT training and even AI training as a skill that we would like to upskill our staff, so the secretariat and the supporting staff. And so it isn't necessarily a skill at this stage that we've identified for the council that's needing to make the governance decisions to necessarily have or rank high on. So that's why we haven't included in the list, but it's definitely something that we can consider going forward. So thank you very much for that, member. The applications on the slide, the 2,200, that's the amount of applications received per year. The amount of applications that's actually processed may be slightly higher than that because of carryover from a previous year. Did we experience challenges in 2023 with regards to staffing? It may have been just prior to that, so there might have been some spillover, but I've been now with HWC for 4 years. When I came in, and it's not due to my efforts, it's due to the Premier's efforts and my predecessor and the team's efforts, there was only 2 heritage officers that was full-time processing all of these applications. The Premier then pulled us into, at that stage, called the Premier's War Room, which became the PDIA. And through that process, capacity was identified in HWC as a severe need. And through that process, we were given additional funding. And so now we have funding for about 10 heritage officers and about 4 or 5 senior heritage officers. 4, yeah. And so on that front, we have been bolstered quite significantly with capacity. I would say, member, it would be interesting to get the details of the cases that you are referencing. I don't want to say that HWC was innocent. We may have not been, but I can personally say that I work with a very good and very competent team. And Heritage Western Cape often gets dragged into conversations about broader heritage management issues. And that's why our poor reputation was one of the challenges that we identified. And sometimes the challenge isn't necessarily with us. It could be with the municipality, but we become the scapegoat. About a year ago, I commissioned a internal control report wanting to know if during a specific time period, HWC processed applications outside of its legislative timeframes. And that internal control, although it was done by the department, it was not our unit, it was the internal control unit. They found that no applications was processed and completed outside of the legislative timeframes. So we try and do our best to stick to those because they were legislated. If we don't give you a response, or if we don't finalize the application in that period, either the conservation body or the developer can, take us to task. And so that becomes also a legal problem for us. So that is something that I just wanted to comment on. And so the cases that you're referring to, if you wouldn't mind sharing those specific ones for us, we can go into the case number and just see what transpired. If it was us, we will own up to it, but maybe some further background can also be provided there. Then, in terms of the participation of council members, we did not have any challenges with council members' participation for the last 4 meetings. There may have been one missed by a member, but I can't recall any member missing more than one. No. So the last group council. That's why I said I fully endorse the current council members. Their participation rates have been very good. Problems with the city of Cape Town or metro versus rural areas. The majority of the applications processed by HWC falls within the city of Cape Town. It's been an ongoing challenge for HWC to get the city of Cape Town to take over the management of what we call grade 3 resources. The legislation provides for a 3-tier management system. Grade 1 is national, grade 2 is provincial, and grade 3 is local. Now, SARA processes national. In the absence of a local authority, the provincial authority must process those applications. Now, in the Western Cape, we don't have any municipality that processes their own applications, although the legislation provides. Heritage Western Cape has declared the city of Cape Town competent to process their own applications for more than 10 years now. But we've, in ongoing conversations with them, we have developed a strategy for them actually to be delegated this authority, but they have not taken over this delegate. We can't force them. They need to sign the memorandum of agreement, and their council has not approved it. And we, to be quite frank, we get stonewalling from the city officials in terms of this, even though they have been declared competent. We've gone so far to implement 7 strategies in which to assist to get the city to take on this delegation. We've escalated this matter to the Premier, to the Mayor, to the city manager, and the latest thing from the Mayor's office has been that the Mayor has requested a legal opinion from senior counsel regarding a couple of matters before they want to consider the city taking over this delegation. One of these is the appeals process. Because Heritage Western Cape, the National Heritage Resources Act requires an appeals process, and the Municipal Systems Act also allows for an appeals process. The two potentially are in conflict. So if a member of the public lodge an application with the city of Cape Town, if the city processed it and they appeal it, who do they appeal to? Do they appeal to the mayor, who is the authority in terms of the Municipal Systems Act, or do they appeal to HWC's appeal authority? HWC has taken a position to say that is not an issue for us. You can pick. You can decide if you want it to be the city's appeal process or HWC's process. And we've even gone so far as to say that the legal risk to that is minor. We would even be willing to let that go through that process. And if a member of the public challenge it, let the court decide which is the correct one, because we're getting to a point where they saying one thing and we saying another, and we can't move on. And so there's 1 or 2 of these things that is now in that legal opinion. And so if the standing committee can assist HWC in this endeavor, it would be very much appreciated. I'm talking under correction, but more than 50% of our applications are City of Cape Town applications that they should be dealing with. So out of this 2,200, the majority is City of Cape Town. And so it makes sense from the developer and the public perspective that holds the asset, that holds the site or the structure, to go to the city for their building plan and their heritage approval. Right now, they need to go to the city and HWC. It prolongs the process. It costs more time. It costs more money. It's extra red tape. And so the city could be the one-stop shop. And so this will fast track, the development sector. And it's something that we've been really pushing. We have been doing what we call exemptions with the city to try and make the load lighter. What that entails is the city identifies certain developmental areas, a register gets done to see what potential properties or sites have heritage value. Those get identified, and then the area as a whole gets exempt. And so if somebody then owns a property and they go to the city wanting to develop or do maintenance to a building, they will see that this has been exempt, and so they don't have to apply for a permit. And so we've been rolling out several of those as one of those 7 strategies that I mentioned to de facto give the city, the option just to maintain that area. The benefit to HWC if the city would come on board to take that over, it will loosen or unburden our resources to now focus on the grade 2 heritage resources, the heritage resources of provincial significance, which we actually should be focusing on rather than the grade 3, which falls within the city, and that will be the big spin-off for us. And so, yes, Chair, there is definitely at the moment a much larger concentration on applications that come from metro or municipal areas than rural. I think that sort of covers the relationship with the city as well. We have quarterly engagement with them. We've got good engagement with them, and we've been fostering good, positive relations because there's no use in fighting with them. It's not constructive at all, and we feel like we've been making good progress, but we're just getting stuck with this delegation item now. I would like maybe Colette and Penny just to unpack a little bit more. They can do that better than I can in terms of the intangible heritage. And then if there's any other points that you feel I haven't sufficiently covered, please come in.
Thank you, Michael. I think Penny can maybe provide a bit more structure to the response. But in terms of intangible heritage, so the legislation, the National Heritage Resources Act, refers to living heritage. And that is defined as intangible aspects of inherited culture. And that's quite broad. There is a breakdown of a list of the types of intangible or living heritage, which relates to oral history, performance, ritual performance, etc. But that is sort of just a summary of what can be. And I think it's because of that broadness of scope that in terms of managing heritage sites, there are challenges when it comes to looking at something in terms of its bolt form versus the oral history or the memory associated with it. We've been operating in terms of having these discussions around living heritage or intangible heritage as it's referred to in the absence of a national policy, but we have very recently through our assistant director who's also responsible for policy, she has drafted a very sort of a framework for what could potentially be a more provincial approach to having this discussion. And so a lot of what we do in terms of management does steer in terms of the focus towards what can be termed built, but the discussion with regards to living heritage and components of it, like indigenous knowledge systems or other aspects, are always taken into consideration. We have members of our committees and also on council that understand, and we often have these dialogues parallel to not just looking at the bolt form and the structure. A good example of that in recently was the Provincial Heritage Site declaration of the Rockland Civic Centre in Mitchell's Plain, which is the site where the UDF was inaugurated in 1983. And in and of itself, even though it was an interesting structure, in terms of its bolt form, it wasn't particularly exceptional, although the history was interesting, I suppose, locally speaking, but it was the significance of the event that happened there. And so that was declared, but it was the discussion around how do you phrase and structure the significance aspect of it and ensure that that is maintained. And then you start really talking about other aspects of memory, promotion, etc., when it comes to dialoguing around these issues of, in this instance, resistance and what happened at that time. So there's things that we are also recognizing. And as our CEO said in the beginning, HWC has been around for just over 20 years. And I think it's found its feet and matured in the sense that it is competent for all the sections of the legislation as SARA has delegated those functions. And we've done well to set up the operations and the structures to deal with permit applications around built environment issues. But we've also matured in terms of our committees and our committee's expertise and the staff as well in dialoguing around these issues and having conversations with interested and affected parties around how do we actually now look at identifying and celebrating aspects of memory and that memory culture in the country and in the province. So I think we're actually getting there slowly but surely. And the fact that we have a draft framework, I'll say, for living heritage is a positive step that we've done in the last year as well. Penny, I don't know if you want to add.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I do suspect that Member Gwensu's got a follow-up, but he's not here right now. Are there any other follow-ups? No, no. And online, I don't see any questions there. Okay, so where we are now then, if I understand it, is we have 31 applications. The department is advising that we look at a short list of approximately sort of 12 so that the minister can then appoint, you say an optimum number is sort of 7 or 8. Did you say you'd had a resignation in this term? Was it related to the work, or was it just a personal issue in terms of the resignation?
It was a personal matter.
Okay, are there any further questions at this point? Anything the department would like to add or mention or bring up? I am going to follow up with the issue of city. I think that in and of itself is maybe a discussion we need to have, because of that is going to relieve what the provincial heritage department has to deal with. Obviously, that's going to be a win for everybody concerned. So I'm not going to unpack that now because this is a different issue. But is there anything else you'd like to bring to our attention at this point?
I think you did have a question about other local authorities, and I just want to make the point that if the City of Cape Town took over its grade 3 responsibilities, we would have more ability to outreach to other local authorities who are interested in also becoming competent, but they do need a lot more hand-holding and helping. So Drakenstein is kind of also, we found them to be competent, and they're en route to becoming, to taking over. But yeah, the City of Cape Town I've been with Heritage Western Cape since 2014, and it has been an issue since then to try to get them to accept the delegations.
Thank you. Then just before we close off, I just want to find out if Member Gwensu has got a follow-up question.
I was under the understanding that it is a heritage site, and you are saying they're still busy with that process. I'm fine with that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just for some context, just for members as well. So in terms of the heritage legislation, Penny can explain it much better than I can. There is sort of provisional protection, and then there's formal protection. So any structure that is older than 60 years falls under this provisional protection. And so that's not officially declared then as a heritage site, but the legislation says because it's older than 60 years, you have to apply for a permit because we need to check if there's any heritage significance. Any structure that gets formally protected goes through this process with HWC where it's nominated and then formally gazetted and protected. And so it might be that when people look at a building, they see it's old and they know somebody had to apply for a permit, but it doesn't mean that that's an official heritage site. It just means that it's older than 60 years and that's why they had to apply. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate you coming to brief us. I think we're far more capacitated now to know what we're looking for. And we're going to go on with our discussion then about how we're going to start looking at shortlisting. But I think before we do that, if we could maybe just take a 5-10 minute comfort break. There is tea, I believe. And then we'll come back, the committee will come back at 10:10 and then we'll continue. But thank you very much. Okay, great. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for sitting in the briefing. I think it potentially helps us enormously in knowing what we would be looking for. If I can ask Mr. Matthews, so do we have a list of 31 applications?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have the list with it was submitted to the members as well. I don't know if you want me to flight it.
Members, should we flight the list? I mean, we're not making any decisions today.
Yes,
Okay.
the list. I don't know if members want to print it out because I see a lot of the CVs are obviously electronic. So if any member wants the hard copy, then because I don't want to print and sit with a lot. So member Philander, look at that.
I would
So then okay.
To read through, yeah.
Okay. So as stated in the presentation, there was no indication of the process the committee must follow. As we've done with a lot of other entities, we've had different approaches. So it is a committee decision on how you decide to go forward. Are you going to get to a decision that is not being dictated or formalized? Whether it is interviews or shortlisting just from perusal or creating a shortlist from that and then interviewing. It's entirely up to the committee which decision you make. I would recommend that whatever decision you do so via resolution, so that is at least it's a standard for this committee, because the chances are that we might have to do this again, whether it's for this entity or in this term or another entity. At least you have your process, because it's not defined anywhere. It just says submit the shortlist. Yes, so that is something that the quicker you do that, maybe you want to read through all the CVs first and then make your decision, and perhaps root out candidates that are not suitable. And obviously, whatever decision you make, I would advise the committee to use what the department presented in terms of the skills that are needed, what's working, what's not working. Yeah, I'll say that.
May I then make a suggestion to the committee? Obviously, we're open to other suggestions, that we take some time to read through the list. Mr. Matthews will print the CVs for those who require them. I don't actually need them printed so much as in a more accessible form. I don't mind them being on email, but I find it a nuisance having to go through a link. That's quite complicated. So if one could maybe simplify how one accesses them, then I don't necessarily need them printed.
Chair, what I can do is I'll go via the links and then copy all of it into a folder that you just click as a PDF document or whatever it's saved as, and in that way it will just be accessible there. And what I could also do is make a folder for each candidate, and then populate each folder with that particular person's details. And then obviously the Excel sheet, we can just minimize it so you can have a summary, a broad picture of Mrs. X, whatever qualifications, blah, blah, blah. And then the folder will also have the proof of qualification or cover letter, whatever is in the nomination.
I would find that very useful. I think if other members possibly, I mean, who wants to have it printed, obviously can have it printed. Also, it allows us to see, are all the applications compliant? I mean, I know with the Commissioner for Children, we had 64 applications. Ultimately, I think it was significantly less than that, in the 40s, of how many were actually compliant. So we can have a look at that. And then may I also suggest that we have a read through of those. And then I will also condense the, there's no process, but I'll condense what has been done possibly in the past to put in a memo so people can think about it. And then we can come back to this discussion, I think, at the next slot, which I think is the 9th of September. And we can discuss the way forward, people then having read everything. Would that be in order? Any variations or suggestions or other options?
I support you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Do we need to do a resolution? Or is it?
No, it's fine because it's not the process that we're doing. Because it's just for the information to be easily accessible.
Okay, thank you. Then I want to try to get this done so that we're all still here. The other thing we just need to touch base on this morning is the issue of, I've got so many papers in front of me, the Liquor Authority. Has everyone received a letter from Minister Marais on the vacancies in the Liquor Authority? So what happened in the last meeting is there were questions about the nominations because there are 2 vacancies, but we've only received a list of 3 nominations, and there was concern that the department had possibly only forwarded those 3. If one looks at this correspondence, sorry, these glasses are so annoying. The MEC confirms that they did in fact advertise for over a month, from the 14th of February to the 23rd of March. And for the 2 vacancies, they in fact have only received 3 nominations, which I think answers that. The other point that was raised was, as there are 2 vacancies, do we need to appoint 2 people? And it's also clarified in this correspondence that if we only want to do one recommendation, that is also acceptable. So we have to look at competencies and abilities of the 3 nominees, and we can nominate or recommend 2, but if we're not satisfied, we can also only recommend 1, which I think answers that. I know we've had difficulty getting attendance from all 3 nominees on the same day at the same place. Our next slot, we could reschedule the interviews, all 3 of them. But I just want suggestions from the committee as to how one would deal with it if we again have a situation where one of the nominees is not available on that day due to, like last time, they had a court appearance or something along those lines. Member Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would also like to propose that we move forward with this item and that we look at a possible committee slot. I think 2 weeks notice from now is more than sufficient, and give all the candidates notice as soon as possible, and that we schedule the interviews for let's say the first committee slots more or less 2 weeks from now. I think is ample time for someone that's supposed to be committed to the cause to actually plan accordingly. So I don't think that's an unfair notice to send out. Thanks.
Chair, I think Member Johnson has covered quite extensively in terms of the notice period as well. So I do support the proposal. Thank you.
Sue? Gonna get the click right.
Maybe it's because you are the chair. At least since you assume this position, you are getting there pronouncing my surname. Okay, look. Yeah, well, it's a dilemma all of us we are concerned about, and one, the matter has to be expedited. But my deep interest, I wonder what has made this not to draw a number of candidates. I'm deeply concerned. Looking at the time given, in fact, the notice was about a month, from the 25th of February to 20-something of March to March, quite close to a month or so. I wonder, but I looked at where were these advertised? I think 2 papers and also the website, we are told. What does this represent in terms of good governance? What is it that can be done? Because I don't think it's contrary to good governance to be obvious in the process. Because in its current form, potentially it could be obvious. And therefore it lacks the competitive aspect. and depriving, as we argued previously, depriving the committee as well as the MEC, the opportunity to draw from a broader pool. I don't know where I stand. I know no one, even if I can go and headhunt if we're to do that. But I'm just concerned about that. Whether we should, Matthew is here, we should go with the 3 in the event, as you made the point, that one is not is not coming. Potentially, we may appoint. What if the 2 or the 3, right? We're not impressed by the 3, is not going to stall the process. What should be done? If we call for a advertisement, what impact will that make? The point which I thought we were going to entertain previously, that why are we not going through that route, right, of re-advertisement to ensure that at least, we are given the latitude to look at the number of candidates in the best interest of the industry. But now it has become just obvious, So that's the issue. I understand, Chair, that I may sound not to be further problematizing or complicating the process, but I'm making these remarks in the best interest of the institution, in the best interest of the process itself. Thank you very much.
Look, I think that we're in a situation at the moment, when I say we, I mean, I think government in general, where there's legislated methods of advertising, but the media space is changing. I mean, quite honestly, how often does the average person read the Cape Times or whatever? Most people get their news off Twitter or, various other platforms. I think maybe what we should be doing, we can also drive it as a committee, is look at how the Western Cape government advertises in general. Because I think there is space to say, in a changing world, what is an effective thing? In this particular situation, I mean, the advertising is done by the department, and it's obviously, it's done in compliance with what is required. So I think let's move forward in terms of the proposal that we've had with our next slot. If Mr. Matthews could then notify people and emphasize that if they're not able to make this this interview, it's going to be unfortunate, should we say. Let's see if they all are available. We do have the rest of the process and the questions and everything already laid out very nicely. Thank you. But then I think also concurrently, let's bear in mind that we see a lot of this, not so much with heritage. There seems to be a lot of people nominated there, but we should start thinking about ways in which the Western Cape government can try to maximize its public participation in these processes. Maybe somebody wants to bring a recommendation or something. Maybe at the next meeting, bring a recommendation about how we start reviewing processes to increase our advertising reception. I'm probably not phrasing that very well, but that kind of thing. And then let's see what we can do with that. Because I think that's a very, very solid suggestion. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the committee could going forward. I mean, I don't know if this has been done before. I just thought about it. Sending a recommendation to the departments that have entities reporting to the committee, stating that any future requests for referral to the committee, the accompanying documentation should include that specific department's advertising timeline, the whole process, so that when we get that to say, look, you need to shortlist 5 people, the committee, and it's ATC and refer to the committee will already have the information of how this department got to this particular shortlist, and what actions they took, because I note that because of the gift that we get from the department, now the committee looks at, but why did you only get this? And so it also cuts out time and also makes it a bit easier for the committee to then sort of jump straight into it or ask more questions prior to making the decisions. It's just a recommendation. It's not really, it's not procedurally, it's not an advice. It's more of a recommendation to the committee to recommend to the department to be so careful.
No. I think that's a very good recommendation. Have we got agreement that we then ask them to essentially send us the package once they've advertised, which shows us everything? If you can remember that, Mr. Matthews, to sort of put into wording. Okay, yeah, let's do that, because I think that's very interesting, because one can also then do a comparative as to why has Heritage got 31 applications, whereas Liquor Authority, where everyone has an opinion on liquor, has only got 3. So thank you. Okay, right. Are there any other issues, matters, recommendations?
So
Yes.
are we going ahead with interviews with these 2 or 3?
Well, we've had that proposal, and certainly there is an urgency. And I think the suggestion that going forward we then look at how these adverts are done, I think is a very positive thing to do. I don't think the Liquor Authority at this particular point can really wait that much longer.
Okay. I'm not sure. Will it be perhaps so that when we proceed, that we are backed even by legal opinion, maybe from the labor experts in this instance, or what? HR aspect in this instance, in terms of us proceeding with these 3, once 1, 2, right? About the fairness of the process and the integrity of the process, and also in terms of good governance. But also you made a very fundamental point that the cultural heritage people have been about this, but this one is an important sector of our economy, liquor. Only 3. That is why I'm saying, I mean, it does not make sense, because if you like, it's a critical sector of our economy, alcohol. So and you also made a very important point about the changing world, through the digital era, social media and so forth and so on. And it appears that here we use the conventional or the traditional media, the print and the website. And here you can ask all of us here, the 5 of us, how many of us, even those online, the past 2 days we read print media? And which are those papers? I mean, this is just common sense. And that's where I stand. I mean, I'm not comfortable, I must make the point, proceeding with these 2 or 3. Because it's just become an obvious thing. It's a rubber stamping. What's the point for the interviews? Not instead of not giving them. If we're not happy, again, we take us back to this and say, no, okay, we're not happy, let us re-advertise. Then we are further prolonging, yet we had foresight of seeing such problems. Thanks.
Member Johnson.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to confirm in terms of the process, is this the same that we will do either shortlisting and then, well, it's already a shortlist, but if we move ahead with interviews that we can recommend, let's say rank the candidates or recommend a candidate, but the MEC can still appoint whoever she wants. Is it the same, or must she go with our recommendation?
Every committee seems to differ. Mr. Matthews, can you give us direction there?
Chair, the MEC will appoint from the committee's list. So whether that list is 1, 2, or 3, we'll know in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Chair. Then I would like to propose again that we move ahead and schedule the interviews and take it from there. Thank you very much.
Look, that has already been seconded. I think let's go with the process. If we don't find anybody suitable, one can then look at how one goes forward. But I think we're also then going to ask for committees in future to receive the full sort of package of information. Because I think it's important that we actually look at how advertising is done. Is that in order with everyone? Great. Thank you, everybody. And I think that is it, unless there is nothing else anybody wants to raise. Thank you very much. And yeah, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.